Passage 3. Page 195. Questions 7 through 10. Listen to a lecture in a behavioral sciences class.
Some of you may have already heard about or seen a video of the story I'm going to describe. A tsunami in Africa washed a family of hippos out to sea, leaving a baby hippo stranded. The baby hippo was rescued and brought to an animal sanctuary, or place for animals to recover. The baby hippo was frightened and ran immediately to hide behind a giant tortoise. The tortoise came out of its shell and began to cuddle with the hippo. The tortoise helped the hippo calm down, and they formed a strong relationship. This is clearly a case of a tortoise having feelings for a frightened baby animal, isn't it? Is it a case of one animal species showing emotions that we as humans can understand as empathy? That is, being able to understand another individual and put oneself in the other's place? Or is there some other reason behind this incident? As humans, we can never really know what another animal is feeling. We just can't truly get into its head to know what it is thinking. Nevertheless, some rather ingenious experiments have been done to get at the question of whether some animals have a capacity for empathy. The first experiment involves rats. In the experiment, one of two rats who were cage mates, they lived in the same cage, so they knew each other before the experiment was conducted. The first rat was put in an unpleasantly narrow plastic tube that could only be opened from the outside. The second one was put in the cage next to, but outside of the plastic container. This situation actually made both rats show signs of stress.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand. Were the rats in a maze or in their own cage?
Okay, imagine it this way. You and your roommate agree to be part of an experiment, so you go down to the lab. Your roommate goes off into a room, and when you follow him a few minutes later, you're in a room that's empty except for a plastic tube with your roommate inside. The tube is so tight that he can't even move his arms. He's not in pain and can breathe, but it's obviously uncomfortable, and he tells you so. If you have empathy for your roommate's claustrophobic condition, both of you will feel stress as you try to figure out how to get him out. Okay, so in the actual experiment, the second rat eventually learned how to open the container. And from that point on, every time the rats were in the situation, the second rat would quickly open the container to free the imprisoned first rat. The second rat would not, however, open the container if it was empty or contained a toy rat. Now here's the thing. The second rat would open the container even if it meant sharing chocolate chips with his newly freed cage mate. That is, the second rat would liberate his trapped cage mate even when it didn't seem to help the second rat in any way, and even if it meant getting fewer treats. What could explain this? Maybe it was just that the second rat wanted to get rid of his own stress by freeing his companion, and it wasn't a true understanding of the first rat's discomfort at all. But maybe the second rat did, in some way, understand his cage mate's discomfort and act to relieve it. This desire to relieve the pain of another could also be at work in chimpanzees. In a few different studies, chimpanzees have been found to exhibit consoling behavior toward an individual chimpanzee that has just been on the losing end of some violent disagreement with another chimpanzee. That is, a chimp might approach and put its arm around another chimpanzee that had just lost a fight. Now, there were all kinds of interesting variables that were observed and recorded in these studies. For example, it turns out that female chimps showed consoling behavior more often than males, except for the dominant male. The researchers thought it might be due to the dominant male's role in maintaining solidarity in the group. Other factors that increased how much a chimpanzee was consoled was whether the two chimps were related, whether the action had been reciprocated, the chimp had been consoled similarly in the past, and even how high of a social status the victim had in the group. Higher status chimps got more consolation from others. So maybe the chimps really felt each other's pain and wanted to make the victim feel better. That is, maybe the chimpanzees were showing true empathy. Or maybe it was just socially useful to console the loser and not primarily empathy. With the confounding factors involved, it's not clear exactly what the motivation was in many cases. With these studies as examples, it would seem that some animals display behavior that may be an understanding of and desire to relieve another's pain. As more research is completed, we can test the alternative explanations that have been presented here. Perhaps we can find out which, if any, animals beyond humans experience true empathy.